This video is sponsored by Square Enix, and the game for review was provided free from Square Enix themselves. I grew up in the 90s with hand-me-downs of classic Super Nintendo, Jaguar, and Mega Drive games. One of those first RPGs that I ever laid my hands on the SNES was called Secret of Mana, a game that blew my mind as a child. Bear in mind I was 4 when that game actually came out, and ended up playing it when I was around 8 or 9 years old, something like that. The years went by, right, and that game has never stopped being my go-to example of what a great RPG could and should always try and be. Even now, this is still true 30 years later since its release. Yeah, 30 years, that's crazy, isn't it, since Secret of Mana. Unbelievable. 30 years on, and the Seiken Densetsu, or the Legend of the Sacred Sword series, known as the Mana series as we know it in the West, is very much still alive, as we've seen with remakes of obviously Secret of Mana, and also recently with Trials of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 3. And I can tell you now, with this new series entry, it is shining like the Mana sword itself, where it will release on PC Steam, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. It has been 15 years since the last mainline Mana game. Masaru Oyamada, the producer for Visions of Mana, and his team had the momentous goal of refining elements that fans loved from the entire series into something that works for both those older generation fans as well as newcomers to the series in 2024, which is a tall order, but I do think they've nailed it. The game gives beginner, easy, normal, and hard, with a secret 5th difficulty unlocked after completing the game the first time. There is additionally a post-credit storyline and gameplay, as well as a robust New Game Plus package. That's something I wanted to make you aware of very early on, because I thought it was something that definitely gets me to play a game if there is a New Game Plus, and I certainly will be. If you played the demo for Visions of Mana and now you're playing the full version on the same platform, the game recognizes this and gives you a couple of weapons for Val. Specifically, these weapons aren't that powerful, and indeed you can find them on shopkeepers in the game. In fact, you can't really use the Horn Lance until you've got to a certain point to actually unlock the elemental aspect where he can swap to using the Horn Lance. So they're pretty cool in terms of a little extra thing, but you can get them in the game as well. They're not exclusive to the demo. In terms of options then, very briefly, the game comes in both Japanese and English audio, of which when you change it will require a full game restart for that to apply. There's also various languages supported through text and subtitles on screen, including speaker notifications, text speed changes to make the text appear on screen a lot quicker, rotations and display of minimaps to clean up your HUD even further, the ability to turn off your mission display if you want to clean it up even further, your controls display if you want to clean the screen up even further, so that you don't have those tooltip reminders of what button does what. Although I would say that's pretty useful, especially in the later areas when you're learning how certain elemental mechanics work in the open world. And there's also your battle animations as well. So there are sort of class strikes. You can turn the battle animations off in here and you won't have to ever see those again. Although I would recommend actually watching them at least the first time through. There are some incredible cinematic battle sequences, and you're missing out if you don't see each one of the elemental moves at least once. Automatic target switching is something you might want to consider yourself, considering that allows for the disruption of the flow of combat. For example, turning it off means that you will not just automatically switch to whatever nearest target you're next to. You will still be slashing. Even if the enemy has teleported away, you will be just slashing in midair. With it on, this will slash whatever's next to you and it will automatically switch target, as it says. There's full button configuration on the PC version, as you would imagine, and there's a lot of really great graphics options, including AMD Fidelity Super Resolution, allowing you to switch between the focus of performance or quality. This game runs quite well on a Steam Deck as well, from what I've played. Very limited amount of time on the Steam Deck, But yeah, pretty good. There's also a pretty good camera section as well, where you can change the distance that you are from your characters. If you like playing up close and personal behind your characters, then you've got that option. But me personally, I would probably set this to the medium or the highest setting to give yourself a bit of distance, especially if you're, you know, a little bit sort of sensitive to flashing lights, because there are a lot of flashing lights on screen at any one time from the graphics, you know, explosions, things like that. And there's also boss cameras, auto camera adjust, things like that, as well as a plethora of audio options. So let's dive into Visions of Mana. Firstly, let's briefly talk about the storyline of Visions of Mana. I don't want to talk about this too much, as if you're watching this, then you probably want to know for yourself, and well, that's kind of a point of a single-player RPG, and I'm not going to ruin that for you. The basics then, that you probably know from the demo: your main character is Val, the Soul Guard, a character destined to guide and protect the Alms, which are basically 8 people blessed with the aspects of 8 elementals. This includes fire, wood, wind, water, moon, earth, light, and darkness. These people, who you meet on your journey and add to your squad, offer new ways to play the game. I found myself falling deeper into the plot than I'd ever thought I would, full of intrigue, loss, revenge, and pure honor. At times, I even shed a tear for certain characters, or felt elated at a twist with characters I was rooting for. It's impossible for me to kind of explain this without spoiling it, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. The story plays out extremely well, and it feels extremely well written. And the characters in this game aren't annoying. Well, unless you count Karina.
You folks in the habit of staring at strangers? What is it? Are you selling something? Find somewhere else to hawk your wares.
I don't find her annoying, but I know some people have said that on forums. But she is deliberately written to challenge everything, to be a bit of an outcast of her own fault. It's part of her and many of the other characters' growing character development through the storyline, seeing how they evolve, how their mindset changes. It has plenty of twists, turns, and many "oh" moments throughout. I dare not go into any more detail than that, but it is an emotional roller coaster of a game, and if you're looking for a game like that, this is certainly the one to play in 2024. The story of the game took me around 44 hours on Steam to complete on the normal mode difficulty. That was what I went for my first playthrough. I did quite a few side quests and objectives too, but never enough to go out of my way to do them unless I really wanted to, or I saw a reward that I really wanted. The side quests, by the way, are incredibly good, some written better than others. I mean, you still have your "go get my son 4 crab's legs" quests, but what RPGs don't have that? That's kind of a staple. But there are some absolute bangers in this, with actual decent rewards that are surprisingly good. There are even unique weapons locked behind them, and to which you might go, well, Meoni, what's the point? They're probably low level, and a lot of that weaponry will be replaced. To which I'd agree stat-wise, obviously. But there is a Glamour System. You can at any time change the appearance of your equipped weapon with any other of the same type you have picked up that's currently in your inventory, and some of them look incredible. The game has 5 playable characters, of which you can use 3 at any one time. And the best thing is, if you don't want to have Val in your party like I didn't after the first couple of chapters, the game doesn't force you to. You can just completely remove him, apart from in cities, he has to be your main character. But everywhere else in the world, he is gone in my game. So if you enjoy fast-paced combat, and in my case playing as a ninja on Morley and having 2 casters smash the bosses to death, then we totally can do that, all without having that main character included at all. Each character is an arm of an element, but that doesn't mean, for example, that Morley is locked into only moon powers or Karina wind. No, they can actually switch to any elemental vessel that you've acquired so far that they want to. And then you can use a page of a menu called the Elemental Plot to expand the abilities they have access to for that class, which itself is expanded by finding artifacts on your journey in chests and quest rewards that unlock extra pages of abilities to learn. And the beauty here is that if you want to learn a moon-specific ability, but you really want to play on, let's say, a wind vessel, you can still use that moon ability on any other vessel you switch to for that character once you've learnt that ability. That makes unlocking every tree and trying many different things out fun, and in fact quite rewarding to see how powerful you can make your character. With 5 characters and 8 elemental vessels, that comes to 40 different classes in the game for you to mix and match between, in addition to the custom abilities learnt from defeating monsters for their core stones, as well as rare abilities you might find as items in chests or from side quest rewards. On my late game setup here, I have Morley as an Earth Elemental Vessel Ninja, using multiple elemental magics, mixing that in with high-flying acrobatic stabbing. Karina is a dancer spinning cyclones and literally summoning demons, and Palomina beating enemies up hand-to-hand combat whilst summoning earthquakes, walls of fire, beams of deadly moonlight, and occasionally healing the party when she feels like it. There are shortcuts you can set up for items as well as moves so that you don't have to use the ring menu and pause the combat if you don't want to. So that comes to pretty much how you want to play. Personally, having my most used abilities for a character as a shortcut on them in combat, such as heals or resurrection, saves a few seconds out of the frantic action being paused for me to look down the menu. And there's a lot of abilities, trust me, once you unlock them, but you'll find your own way to make it work. I also love that the tactics menu allows you to choose how your allies react. A strong advisory from me then is to turn on attack same target as player, I think it's called. There are bosses that rely much later on in the game with specific parts of them being attacked and destroyed before they can be weakened, and it's not very helpful when Karina is just spamming whirlwinds at its arm and not doing anything. So having it, focus same target as player is a really good idea. Makes the bosses die quicker and makes it feel a little bit more like the AI is listening to you, which is already a problem in a lot of games, but at least we can change the way it works here. The expanse of this job system then is truly what made me want to do as many side activities as I did playing through the game. Obviously, without treading too far out of the beaten path, just to grab some, crab legs for a little Timmy all the time. But I really enjoyed the combat a lot. I've seen some criticism before the game came out of people who played the demo and said that Val is incredibly slow. You can take it from me that all of the cumbersome nature of that early gameplay, even though, Val is a good character on certain elemental vessels, I have to say that he definitely felt a lot slower in a demo because of where it is in the game. When you start to unlock more elemental vessels and give him more power, still though, I think my favorite is Karina, Palomina, and Morley in a group together. They are just really good. Regardless of what I choose, they just seem really, really good, and fast-paced action is what I'm all about. The casters, filling the screen full of as many mechanics as possible whilst doing pirouettes in the air and stabbing things multiple times. It looks so good. So let's bring it on to how the open world feels then. That's something else that's a big contender for people. Like, is the open world actually full of things to do? So there's plenty of activities in each zone's open world. They're quite large. Some are bigger than others. There are elemental areas that challenge you to delete as many bad guys as possible within a time limit, usually in waves of 2 or 3. And if you can clean them all out within that time limit, you get a treasure chest. And you also get a ticked box of completion on your map for that area. There are elemental types of these areas too, all over the world. And if you do enough of the lesser ones, greater areas unlock, which are the same idea with a time limit, but usually higher level, more tricky, more waves, and better rewards. Obviously, that's something else to work towards, that sort of end game. Come back and do that. Beyond just areas, we have the grizzly syrup to collect.
Oh, grizzly syrup! It's sweet and boy does it smell great! Grizzly! Grizzly! Grizzly!
Grizzly! Which you can eventually trade to a race called the Dud Bears, which speak only in Duddish. You can buy limited quantities of items here, of consumables, but most notably there's these vials of permanent status for your character of choice. These, just do not miss out on them. Buy them when you see them and collect syrup as you traverse. It's pretty good. A +1 to stamina or int might seem like absolutely nothing, but it really does all add up. Trust me, it's quite important to get those. It can make things a lot easier, especially late game. There are creatures known as Nemesis in the open world. These are sometimes quest objectives, which if you've already killed them earlier, then the quest giver actually recognizes this and gives you the reward anyway, which is nice. I like that. Nemesis creatures are usually a lot higher level than you when you first meet them. They usually have a purple glow or some crystalline effects and have unique powers. Like all of the monsters in the game, they also drop core stones, which is another currency that can be converted at a later point in the game at a vendor called Niccolo for new abilities you can use for your character, usually related to the enemy it actually came from, which is why I refer to this as kind of like blue magic. I think it's really cool. There are ancient ruins across the world with sealed doors, one usually in every major open world zone. These are guarded by packs of high-level monsters. Usually they're around level 55 or above, that once you defeat, remove one of the seals on the door. Sometimes they have 4 packs of monsters to delete, or 3, but when they're all defeated, the sealed door blows off its hinges and lets you delve inside, where there is usually a unique Nemesis boss, as well as a treasure chest once it's defeated. And those treasure chests have very, very cool rewards inside. Weapons, armor, and all of the things that you would want to collect. Little Cactus returns from the other games, hidden across the world in many ridiculous locations. Simply interacting with him gets you his diary entry, and off he goes to hide somewhere else.
There you are, little cactus.
There you are, little cactus.
If you didn't know, collecting these casually is actually a good idea. You don't need them all per se for all of the rewards, but if you want to get just a little reward, if you collect enough of them, you can get a permanent EXP multiplier to any fight encounter in the game as you go through it. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye out, especially if you want that 1.5 times EXP just for collecting a few of them. There are even sections of previous places that you've been to that were just simply inaccessible in the world, with treasure chests on a high ledge that seemingly are impossible to get to. And it turns out that you need certain powers that you unlock by progressing the main storyline to gain those elemental vessels are required for those earlier places. So if you're finding it too hard to figure something out, you're actually promoted in a lot of the content to come back another time, which is especially true for many of the combat-related activities in an area too, like Nemesis targets or Ares. It's just best to come back when you've beefed up enough, as well as having access to be able to get to a lot of those places, or you're just going to basically waste your time. From jumping over floating rocks in blustery valleys to flying on the back of a rocket through a literal volcano, using time itself to repair sections of dungeons, floating across canyons with bubbles of water, to creating swing platforms out of pure darkness and mirror puzzles and tricks of the light element. The game is rich with its gameplay mechanics, which it introduces at a fairly steady pace, always making a new area or dungeon feel unique and making you feel excitement for whatever the next element's gimmick will be. Sure, some of the puzzles will probably not be everyone's idea of a fun time, but they aren't usually that difficult and feel more like a show of what can be done since the last mainline game 15 years ago, more than actually offering too much of a challenge. Although there are some parts of a game late game, especially post-credits game, that do offer a little bit of a challenge in that regard. So, you know, it's kind of swings and roundabouts. Travel around the world is done, as you probably saw if you played the demo, on these things called Pikuls, giant dog wolf creatures that you summon with a bell. You can mount in any area that isn't a city or a dungeon, so that makes moving across these pretty large open world areas much easier. Additionally, there is multiple ways to fast travel. You have meridian travel that lets you teleport between meridians, which are the save points. You can open your map and click on an icon, usually an entrance to a zone on a map, to teleport there if you've been there before. And there is also a return of the overworld map, which is supported by Vuskav the turtle from previous games, which will speedily send you around the world on his back across the ocean, or much later a return of the series favorite Flammy, which is my favorite, allowing you to literally fly around the world in 2 seconds. much like the older games. The music in this game that we've not even talked about yet made me pause literally and go and purchase the collector's edition for the included CDs for the soundtrack. I'm not even kidding. I loved every minute of discovering new zones, both visually but mostly sonically. They really paint that nostalgic picture with small leitmotifs, references to previous games in the series, as well as bold new themes as well, many of which are infectiously catchy, to which I ended up humming them whilst doing the dishes. In my final opinion then, Visions of Mana, after playing it, is a true return to a classic series that has been given life like the Mana Tree itself to hopefully bless many more games to come. It is one of the best RPGs I have played of the year, and probably one of the best RPGs of its type I have played in the last 15 years. I'm a fan of the series. I had zero expectations for this one going into it, but I am very happy to see that the passion I found in the games I used to play as a kid can still be found in this new entry in every aspect of its design 30 years later. What an amazing game, and a must-play from me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Square Enix for giving me an opportunity to play this, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Somebody help me, I've turned into a cat-shaped snowman. Will help, guys? Please?
Oh, the Dud Bears will love this.